So, hey everyone, happy Friday. Hope you enjoyed the vacation from last week when I was in Barcelona for ZCon. But back with a vengeance with a hot one this time. Scott's with us. It's gonna be a good show. How have you been, Scott? Has been busy?
Yeah, it's been quite a ride, but yeah, I mean, I recently got Tech and Things rebooted as the new name of my podcast, so I'm just trying to do like one podcast a week now these days on Sundays.
Yeah. At first, I thought you said Tekken things, as in like Tekken. Like,
Yeah, no.
yeah. It's definitely been like there is a certain trend, of course, to a lot of like crypto bros and stuff are just migrating to AI and things like that, whatever the new hot thing is.
Yeah.
But
Unfortunately, that's partially my yeah.
in your case though, like you gotta actually looked into like I have gotten some useful tools from you and stuff on AI and stuff. So it's not like just doing like a shilly pivot to like hype stuff up, get people to watch. It's just like, oh, I actually learned some interesting tools, and I use quite
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
I use quite
Yeah,
a
because I
few.
use it in my like my day-to-day life now, like for my job. So it's not just like yeah, it's not like a like virality pivot. It's more of like I'm trying to focus more on, and I mean I've covered this stuff in the past. Like I've covered some stuff on AI and some stuff on cybersecurity, etc. But I just think the new name and stuff reflects more accurately of what I'm trying to cover, which is more like the digital transformation to Web3 and beyond with
Hmm.
AI and blockchain, etc. So that kind of encompasses everything. If I'm just focused on like crypto and blockchain, kind of miss out on a lot of relevant pieces to the puzzle. And you know, I mean, as we might discuss, AI is starting to get involved in the blockchain space. We see with like Open AI starting WorldCoin, so that's a whole thing
Hmm.
too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's especially interesting because I think kind of part of the crypto ethos isn't just decentralized, censorship resistant, all that kind of stuff for established people. It's also anybody can be anybody. It's not like what's your authorization? Any random, kid in like a village in Honduras, let's just say, can like start mining whatever new coin if he figures out on some little rickety laptop, or he could send a thing here or there, like all that kind of stuff. And I feel like AI is starting to do the same sorts of things because,
Yeah.
like for example, and I'm very much of a baby with all that stuff, but it's like the fact like doing a text to video is pretty insane to be able to do
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, or just like create like fantastic looking graphics just because of your imagination and wiggling around with a prompt and like all that kind of stuff that if you're a poor kid somewhere and you don't have like you have nothing but like time on your hands to just try to figure stuff out, you could do that. And also I've been using Find a lot these days, PHIND, right?
Right. It is
Because
so useful.
it is so useful, and I found out like as a general purpose AI kind of search engine, it tends to be what I use because the Chat GBT one that it's not paid, doesn't have any data from the last 2 years, and so it's just not super useful all the
I don't
time.
think the paid one does either, though.
Really.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Oh.
No. There's no real time access for it. That's why Find is so like key. And the great thing about Find too is you can inject prompts into your searches, so you could literally be like, summarize this website
Mm-hmm.
and give me the details on da 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 da. Like you can inject prompts into the search, which
Mm-hmm.
makes it just like 10 times more useful.
Yeah.
Because I've actually done it where I put in like 10 links and I'm like, give me summaries of all of these articles, like just
Mm-hmm.
all in one, thing nicely formatted, and it'll do all of that.
Yeah, the thing and where that intersects with crypto, and I guess that's the last thing I'll mention before we roll the intro and stuff, is crypto is open source tech and money. And the open sourcing means there's a lot of documentation out there because everyone's doing stuff, which means
Yeah.
something like an AI tool like Find is really interesting for, it's really useful for doing crypto things. Like, for example, I've not been super technical with crypto, but at some point, there was only one Electrum server running that supported the Dash network, and I was like, oh, let me try. And so I just looked up how to run my own Electrum X server. I put it all into Find, and then I'm like, all right, now I know how, and I just do it all this, you know, like I don't think I'd be able to be that good of a Linux user without something like Find, because like I don't really know anything, but I just type it in and find just all the command line stuff pops out. And so
Yeah.
I do know some actually very high level crypto devs who heavily lean on GPT to write a lot of their code. Even though, I mean, obviously they could do it themselves, but they just like save a ton of time, like refactor a couple things. And so like the fact that, you know, like a lot of VC money goes into crypto, but the fact that VC, like, it's a higher, like very high end developers, but if a few decent developers with AI can just recreate a lot of the same product, that's very democratizing. And if instead of hiring a fancy production studio, you can just use some basic AI tools to like auto take clips out of podcasts for TikTok kind of purposes and make 3D looking images that you splice in there and like just have like a whole like media department kind of feel on the super cheap. You know, it's all very
Speaking of which,
interesting.
have you actually found an AI that can auto clip for you? Because I haven't found something that awesome yet.
I have not. Because I tend to clip my own, and
Yeah.
what then I do. I've just now started using the AI transcripts, the subtitles. You know, and because no one
Oh,
can
okay.
do
Yeah.
that, and I'm trying to find as a good tool. And I'll have to start the show officially after this, but a good tool to make the like, you know, the 3D effect on a photo where the photo doesn't the photo, it just kind of like goes 3D and like moves a little bit, and then that's it.
Yeah.
To
Just
kind
like the slight animation. Yeah.
I've tried that with a couple of different tools, and it didn't work. It moved too much and did like weird things. It just went like a little subtle 3D kind of motion for like still images, and that's what but like those kinds of things, I've seen like Photoshop and guides and stuff like that on how to do that, and it's a lot of like work and expertise to do it manually. But then with all that, I mean, I don't know. I'm just very excited about that part of things, and yeah, I've been using a lot of AI. All right, let's actually, yeah, it's funny. Kieran Mosquita in the comments says, AI versus VC, which two letters will win? It's funny stuff. All right, let me hit the intro and then go into this.
By the way, is this video or no?
Hey, yes, this is video. Hey everyone, hi.
Okay.
Welcome to Digital Cash Rundown, episode 123. 4 5 comes after that. No, just kidding. I'm joined by the one and only Scott Cunningham, aka Scott C Business, the number one ham, and we're talking about fun stuff today. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I don't think Cointree is working these days, sadly. So if you'll have to just tell me, you'll have to buy my NFTs if you want to support the channel in this moment until I figure out a better solution, because, you know, stuff. But this would have been a great episode to capitalize on all the rage super chats, because today we're talking about not 2 letters, but 3 letters, HEX. So yeah, you've tangled with these guys before, right, Scott?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Hex is quite a beast, but I mean, I think I pretty much debunked it like a long time ago. But, you know, Richard does his thing, and we've got Pulse that just recently launched, and I mean, I haven't really seen a lot going on there, so I'm really interested to see how this SEC case plays out.
Yeah, we're mixing a few different things. It's like enemy of my enemy kind of thing, but also, I don't know. There's not a lot of heroes in this story right here, but let's just hit on the first one. So, first story, right? SEC files complaint against Hex founder for allegedly offering unregistered securities. According to the SEC, Richard Hart allegedly used more than $12 million of investor funds to buy a 555 carat diamond, expensive watches, and the high-end automobiles. So yeah, they're going after him and his products, Hex, PulseChain, and PulseX. I don't even know what PulseX is. I know what Hex is. PulseX Hex on PulseChain? I don't know. Probably not.
I
Hex
don't know.
fans
It's
in the comments
probably
are
the
losing their.
next iteration or something.
Yeah, and so here, the statement from the SEC is: today we charged Richard Hart, aka Richard Schuler, and 3 unincorporated entities that he controls, Hex, PulseChain, and PulseX, with conducting unregistered offerings of crypto asset securities that have raised more than $1 billion in crypto assets from investors. Hart called on investors to buy crypto asset securities in offerings that he failed to register. He then defrauded those investors by spending some of their crypto assets on exorbitant luxury goods. This action seeks to protect the investing public and hold Hart accountable for his actions. All right, so first, your hot take on this development.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long time coming. Stakehex.com, I believe. I mean, I have the link somewhere in my read.cash article on Hex, but I mean, his partner originally like quit Hex and wrote on the website like something to the effect of, I can no longer continue operating, you know, within this ecosystem or something due to possible market manipulation. And then he closed his website and shut everything down on his end, and then it was just Richard from then on out. I mean, from that, like that alone made it pretty clear to me where things were headed, and this was like 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, I mean, this was a long time coming. I could bring up my article and go like line for line as to all the different things that point into this being a scam, but you know, there's really diehard people a part of the whole Hex ecosystem and wanting this income, this passive income that is like guaranteed, and that seems to kind of always be the promise of scams. So, you know, it's kind of like right on the money for what you would expect. You know, guaranteed profits, very high percentages, all the kind of general red flags you'd expect, and literally what's on the SEC website for what might be a scam.
Yeah. I should point out that you did an article on this and putting up the why I sold my Hex thing. At least the earliest tweet I could find on that in the short period of time was from October of 2020, so almost 3 years ago. And so
Yeah.
just said why I sold.
Yeah, I posted it on July 1st of 2020.
Yeah. And so there's a ton of comments on this whole thing. And yeah, a lot of things. I said most of these comments is what you said after that. Most of these comments are just people upset with what I wrote. If you find an actual error, feel free to let me know and I'll correct it. And as such, that reminds me of that time that I write an article about the Oasis, the darknet market that Monero was using early days, like 2017 or so, going offline, and everyone got really upset with me, and I got death threats and stuff. But the editor said, I couldn't find a single thing you said that was wrong. So
yeah,
it was incorrect.
That's
so
usually how it goes.
It's like, okay, it's like, you know, what are you saying? So I should also take the time to point out something interesting, that the original developer, one could even say original architect of Hex, is actually in the live chat right now. Although I should very much put out that is a friend of mine who is actually a whistleblower. Like, he definitely unceremoniously left the Hex project and has gotten a lot of flack from Richard and his folks for doing that. So, yeah. So if you need any structural questions answered about, you know, Hex that's not in this thing, feel free to like engage in the live chat, and I'll reference those. But anyway, so the next thing is, you had a tweet not too long ago. I believe just a few days ago, like last week, says, every single project I've accused of being a scam has turned out to be one. The only one outstanding was Hex. But now Richard Hart, aka Richard Schuler, is being sued by the SEC. Save yourself some money and follow my feed. So yes, I agree with the sentiment. although I will nitpick and just say that being sued by the SEC doesn't change anything about Hex from when you first talked about it 3 years ago. It just means
Absolutely
people
agree.
lose
Yeah.
people lose more money because the price tanked because of that. But as
Yeah.
it's a separate thing entirely. But it's a good time to like mention that, I guess, right?
Yeah. No. I think that's an important point to make because I wouldn't say that simply being sued by the SEC means you're a scam. However, a lot of the projects that they tend to go after, I would also say on the flip side, tend to be pretty sketchy. Like, a lot of people are happy with the way that XRP is like flipping around, but it locks up crypto in a wallet that you can never use when you have XRP, and I think that mechanism by itself makes it pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
um they're going after Binance. People are like, yeah, well, they're going after the number one exchange, so what do you say about that? It's like, well, Binance stole user funds and used them for governance along with Probit and Huobi to do a hostile takeover of Steam. So yeah, they should also have the SEC go after them. And Coinbase helped fund and invested in BitCloud and promoted BitCloud. Go after them too. Whenever people say it's like, oh, well, like, what about these ones? It's like, yes, I also think they're bad. So, but yeah, I don't think the SEC is like the here all end all decision maker of what is or isn't a scam. It's just, it's nice to see that somewhat of an authority is also on the same, like they're on the same boat thinking, yeah, like this is something that needs to be investigated.
Yeah, that's one thing that I am absolutely not a fan of the SEC at all, and especially this reign of the SEC, I think is basically criminal. Like, there's a lot of interesting stuff going. The thing is, it's kind of like a half and half kind of thing, where I think that about half of the SEC's targets seem to be like sketchy, and the other half seem to just be not sketchy, but like ulteriorly motivated. And so, for example, I personally am not into Ripple XRP. I don't care for it. I don't find a use for it. That doesn't mean it's in any way, shape, or form a scam. Its launch and the way their token sales and stuff are what I would consider unregistered securities offerings. From what that, not that I don't think that should be. I don't think that should be illegal, by the way, personally. I just think that, the market should kind of sort this kind of thing out. But
and I'll agree with that, by the way, too. Like, I don't think
yes,
the selling of unregistered securities is at all the issue with XRP. I think it's the fact that their mechanisms of how it works and how you have to like lock up XRP in the wallet, and for every transaction you send, you have to lock up more XRP, basically forces people to hold XRP and make it look like people are hodling and not wanting to sell, and it's like positive sentiment for the market when really they can't, and it's just stuck in their wallet and they can never do anything with it. Like, I have 25 XRP that I can never sell or use or do anything with. It's just like dead money, and it doesn't make any sense to me, and it just seems kind of sketchy, and that's why I'm really against XRP personally.
yeah. I mean, same thing. And as far as like the lawsuit, it seems to be what I would say the conclusion of the SEC with the XRP thingy was relatively a fair judgment as far as, I guess, the law goes. As long as there are securities laws, it does seem like Ripple was selling unregistered securities. It seems pretty clear. On the other hand, I do like the other part of and as I just said, by the way, to super reiterate, I still don't think the SEC has any business actually enforcing. Like, I don't think they should be able to actually sue a company for failing to register. I think it's nonsense, but it is what it is. But on the other hand, they ruled that, or the judge ruled that secondary sales were not securities sales. So like selling XRP tokens on other exchanges, that kind of stuff, just peer-to-peer sales is not. And I think that is the right kind of thing. Now, we go to, again, this show is right now live streaming on Odyssey, which is on the Library blockchain. Library just lost, not a couple months ago, finally just lost their case against the SEC, where the SEC did not rule either way on secondary sales, which is annoying because now you have all this, or the judge didn't rule. Now you have all this like uncertainty. They did say that the library company did an unregistered securities sale, which I think is much less clear than for Ripple. However, it was like what, a 50% pre-mine or something, and the company was the only one majorly developing on Library. So I kind of get that it was like a company fundraise, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I think it's crazy to say that's criminal, and it's also crazy to say that, like, compared to XRP, I think that the Library token is just always been so much more useful. But that one's also like a mixed bag. But mostly libraries are just a great project that got like ruined by the SEC. Then you get to like Hex and Pulse.
I mean, I would add one more
yes.
point that they sort of like failed at their mission of like staying decentralized and actually being decentralized. That's my criticism of Library, which I'm sure you're well aware of.
Yeah.
I don't think they're a scam. I didn't include them in my list, but I definitely don't like the way that it's progressed and developed over the years. It just feels like another YouTube ripoff now. Like even a lot of the like side projects like Librarynomics and things that track things on Library all just gave up and stopped participating because they're just like, all right, this isn't really a decentralized project anymore. I'll let them do that if they want to. I'm not going to bother contributing because this isn't what it was supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Now, when you go after then the other lawsuits, right? The other things that have been targeted, like obviously Hex, we're going into that, right? But then we go after the exchange suits, where it's Coinbase, Binance, and Bittrex are the big ones, right? And first of all, that seems to be very, in my view, as much as I don't think any of these entities are completely free of wrongdoing or blame over the years. I mean, come on, it does some weird, sketchy stuff.
Binance is by far the most egregious, in my opinion.
I mean, of course. I mean, I don't think any of that should be a crime or against the law. I just think that people should be aware with what they're doing and stuff like that. Personally,
I mean, them taking user funds feels like illegal, though. No.
yeah. Which specific instance are we talking about here? Like of taking user
So
funds?
when Justin Sun did a hostile takeover of Steam,
Oh yeah, that
he
thing.
contacted Binance, Probit, and Huobi, and they gave him literally all the user Steam funds on their platform. They sent them to him directly, which he then staked, and then those users could not withdraw because they were with Justin Sun, and then he staked them for like weeks, and those people could not sell their Steam for weeks. And then it also tanked the price. So these people completely got
Yeah.
like screwed. Like
I will say,
imagine if like Coinbase took your Bitcoin and was like, sorry, we got to lend this for 3 weeks and then you can have it back. And then Bitcoin tanks and then they're like, fine, you can have it back now. It's like, how is any of that legal? That's
yeah,
kind of blows my mind.
I will say I wasn't aware that they actually transfer the funds. I thought that they just staked them in support of Justin Sun's takeover, which is that would be a sketchy move, technically probably embezzlement, but also nothing explicit in the terms of whatever that you. But the fact that if you literally take the money and send it to someone else, that's fraud. They should have, that is absolutely criminal. So I will agree with you on that. That is absolutely criminal. But so as far as these cases, the SEC seems to be going after them to throw like just find things like, for example, all the coins are like, OMG, Algo, Dash, things like that, just saying like, oh, these are like kind of securities according to us in this one case, but not the next case on the same exchange that also supports these assets. There's no consistency across those cases. They never went after those projects either. They just went after the exchanges for selling something that they never alleged was there's no company they're going after. They're alleging anything like that. That seems to be more just let's clean house for FTX2 to come. So let me just hit on the SEC the Coinbase. The Hex version of this. A couple things I said on Twitter. I said I have no sympathy for Richard Hart or Hex. I won't. However, cheer for the SEC. They're destroying more people's money than Hart ever could. I know lots of people invested in Hex. I always told them it wasn't a smart decision, but that's their choice on how they gamble their money. The SEC didn't help them. They just ensured that they'd lose everything quickly. So I don't know if you agree or disagree on that specific take.
Yeah, that's a rock and a hard place situation. I would still say at the end of the day, it's better to, because the flip side would be like, don't do anything about it and let it continue, and then that won't hurt the end user. But it's like, it's a rock and a hard place. It's like I don't know exactly what the right way about that is, but definitely exposing it and at least giving people more caution when they see it's like, okay, well, Hex and PulseChain and stuff is associated with an SEC lawsuit. Maybe I shouldn't invest. At the very least, that's going to help more people than I think are going to be hurt by it, because they rely on new users coming into the system. So that's
Mm-hmm.
purely the focus going forward to keep it going. And if we can at least just like warn more people, then I think the positives outweigh the negatives. I mean, yes, I'm somewhat sympathetic for the people who invested, but I've been telling them for years and people don't want to listen. But I mean, the only thing you can do is try to get more information in front of people so that they're at least aware of what they're doing. And I like that you use the word gambling, because by definition, gambling is investing or putting money towards something with the expectation of potential loss, versus investing, which is putting money towards something with the expectation of potential gain. Or roughly, those are the definitions. But yeah, I would definitely consider putting any money in Hex a gamble at best.
Yeah, and I had some like long arguments with, or discussions, I should say. Not super. It was more. I wasn't trying to fight. I was just trying to like go back and forth and figure out a common truth, kind of common ground about Hex with some Hex fans about the value proposition, and the end of the day, it seemed to be the value proposition of Hex is that it transfers money to the patient who will they lock up their capital, so that's the risk they take, and in exchange for that they're rewarded for being patient, and the impatient or the people who can't afford to do that then end up paying them. And so from that, it kind of is like a game, right? Where you're just like, you're playing a game of hot potato or like the last one or whatever. And I think if you're transparently engaging in such a game, that's not necessarily, I mean, it's gambling, but gambling's not wrong or illegal. I mean, it is illegal a lot of spots, but Onetime actually had a good, let me hit up the super chat here, a good super chat on that thing. He says, is there a difference between a transparent, unsustainable, but honest financial scheme and a scam? Do people need to be denied, quote, protected by the SEC from participating in a financial scheme, even if the people totally understand everything about what they're doing? I'll let you hit up that one.
So that's an interesting way to phrase it, because I think most of these people are not fully aware of the fundamentals of Hex, or they view it in a completely different way than how it's presented, right? Because I mean, what you just said fails to mention that Richard Hart gets most of the money, not the patient. And something that's also really important to point out, which is linked in my article, Richard Hart said in a live stream that he takes all of the bonuses and all the penalties and he just stakes them for like 10 years. So the majority of money from staking is actually feeding back into Richard's pockets. And he's only ever said that once. It was on a live stream. It was on video. You can see it. I've linked it in the article. But that's like one of the only times he's mentioned what actually happens with all the penalties and the bonuses and the fees and the copies that go to him. It actually gets all staked for 10 years, so that the majority of rewards are actually funneling back into the most patient, which in this case is Richard Hart. Like it conveniently happens to be him. So he has by far the most amount, and it's all funneling back into him. The thing that I would say for like people who say, yeah, but it's all transparent and you know what you're getting into, I would argue most people don't know what they're getting into. And if I told you like this is like very sketchy and you really knew all the facts through and through, you probably wouldn't get involved. If you were just saying, oh, okay, you might lose money if you're impatient and you might gain money if you're patient, that's way too much of an oversimplification of what's actually happening in the Hex ecosystem.
Yeah, it's definitely an oversimplification. So the thing is, well, what Onetime's talking here, I believe, is a hypothetical, right? Although I'm sure you can, I'm sure you can correct me if I'm wrong, that he actually believes that this is the Hex thing. This is actually applies fully to Hex. Now the thing is with Hex, there's a lot of that like gambling / patient versus impatient thing, but the way it tends to work, for example, when you unstake early, from what I understand, half of the penalty you pay goes to stakers, but the other half goes to Richard, right? And things like that.
Yeah.
There's some things there. Again, if everyone knows
But then
that.
again, he is the majority of the stakers too. So it's more
Yes.
like, yeah, so it's more like 75% goes to him,
So
25. Like, so that's why it's misleading, because people don't know the like intricacies of, like the math is all correct, but behind that, there's like a completely different situation going on that you're not really aware of, because he never really admits to owning the ETH address, the origin address, the copies, etc.
yeah, so as far as like the actual definition of a scam, and I could pull up Merriam-Webster or whatever, but basically, the layman's term definition of a scam is basically you'll lie to someone and they lose money, and usually you lie to someone so you make money at their expense, where they lose money, and so there's been a lot of very deceptive hex marketing out there. That's where we start to dip into scam territory. All the other stuff is just, this is a really bad casino game. But now we start to dip into scam territory, where I've seen a lot of like, you make this much and that kind of stuff, which not terms and conditions apply here, just like you're going to make that. The average hex user, including a lot of the more above average hex users, I should say, seem to have no clue how it actually works or what they're getting themselves into. They seem to either have been scammed, or they seem to be attempting to scam the greater internet in their comments. That's where it starts to get sketchy. That's where it gets into scam territory. Maybe it would be a good time to open up Justin Bonds of Saber Capital, his whole giant Twitter thread, where he starts out by saying hex is a scam. Okay, he says technically not a Ponzi, but something worse, designed to enrich its founder through Ponzi-nomics, unable to generate its own revenue and purely relying on new investments to avoid collapse. It says, since the SEC just charged Hex and Pulse, here's a deep dive. 25 tweet long thread. So I'm not going to read the entire thing, but basically they promise a return investment of 38% if they lock up their tokens and blah, blah, blah. Well, I need to talk to Justin about being a little more concise with these, because there's a lot of I'm having to skip. It says all the returns are purely based on inflation. Inflation does not create value in itself. In that, any value that's created is simultaneously diluted, assuming constant demand. So that's just how it works, right? It's the pyramid type game.
Yeah.
If they're unable to attract more investors, the price would simply collapse. Absolutely. And also, I should say, a HODL only Bitcoin is the same in this case, where like I don't say that Bitcoin is, but if you're trying to say that Bitcoin is only to be HODLed, then it's the same kind of thing. It's the same kind of a pyramid type thing. At some point you have to pay money for utility. Anyway, I need to stay focused on
It's important to point out though that Bitcoin is mined based on like, actually having to do some sort of work, whereas originally Hex was literally like for the first year and a half or however long it was quite literally send Ethereum to Richard Hart and he will print you Hex out of thin air and just give it to you. Like,
yeah,
completely nonsensical.
Yeah, which is
like in terms
sketchy.
of like tokenomics. Yeah.
And so,
because like we could do that too. You could say, send me 1 Bitcoin and I'll give you 1,000, Desert Links tokens. And it's like, that doesn't,
or
like, that's not
send
anything.
me $100 of, whatever crypto, and I'll send you 1 Digital Cash Network NFT that you can then you can then use.
You can. NFTs are a bit of a different situation because it's like unique,
and it's
there's
utility.
There should
like
be some
one time's commenting in the super chat here because he has an NFT. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to. And also, it's supposed to support the channel, so you're not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be an even trade. It's also supposed to be you're supporting. You're giving me money. So anyway,
exactly. With NFTs, it's a completely different situation. It's like,
yes,
you're getting something, and
this is an interesting twist here with Bonds. Hex does not fit the specific definition of a Ponzi scheme. The SEC defines a Ponzi scheme as an investment fraud that involves the payment of purported returns to existing investors from funds contributed by new investors. And says this is a common defense by hexicans. However, this definition was created over a century ago, does not affect blah, blah, blah. Hex is just a Ponzi scheme with extra steps. It is identical to Ponzi except for not giving new funds to existing investors. Instead, it gives existing investors the Hex token, which Hex can print out of thin air, all the stuff we kind of covered and stuff. But I guess that's
Mhm.
it's not like you put in ETH and you get
But
ETH
it's
out.
still funds because the hex
Yeah.
has value. So I mean, it really just comes down to semantics. I think one
Yes.
thing that Richard's really good at is he's done all this work beforehand. He's like, what is the definition of a scam? What is the definition of a Ponzi? And he's just making sure that he can sidestep whatever that is. Like, so I saw recently when CoffeeZilla was starting to cover it,
Mm-hmm.
he said calling it claiming hex versus investing in hex doesn't change the result of the SEC situation. It's like it's just semantics. Like just calling a word a different word doesn't like make it legal. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like that's really all it is. It's just dodging specific terminology and language so that it's not considered that. And he literally
Yes.
writes about this in his book too, which I've mentioned, Skyvive or whatever it's called, SCIVIV E Skyvive, and he talks about how he used to like buy and sell like fake stereos and all this stuff. Like he's literally been
A
in the
scammer
scam
forever.
industry
This
like since the beginning.
I think that actually gets covered here too, where anyway says in that sense it's quite a bit worse than a traditional Ponzi scheme. In the case of Bernie Madoff, he at least had to carefully manage the purported return to existing investors. In the case of Hex, all value disappears for investors when Hex inevitably collapses. Anyway, so it says clearly not all crypto innovation has been positive. No.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about
Because
like yeah.
in my mind, I'll just say this real quick. In my mind, Hex is always destined to fail. Richard doesn't actually care about getting the Hex back and staking and all this stuff. Ideally, I mean, just logically, mathematically, I would assume that eventually all Hex will just be owned by Richard Hart based on him having all the staking bonuses and everything. And naturally, over time, it would only make sense that all the money eventually slowly trickles back to him. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but aside from inflation, um, but yeah, I mean, I don't see how this could possibly work any other way. He's already got all of his money out in Ethereum, like the millions upon millions of Ethereum that he received. He's already made all of his money. He doesn't need Hex to work out. So it's not like he actually cares about the longevity either. He's not like financially reliant on it. He's gotten hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Ethereum. And I would just go back to the simple question of why does he want your Ethereum so bad if Hex is so good?
Yeah. It's for you. It's, for you or whatever. Also, Odyssey people just mentioned there's no sound on that. That's been a thing frequently, but I mean, come on, the company doesn't have any money. Anyway, this next thing. So Hex also has additional mechanisms to enrich its founder even more. It is possible to leave the Hex lock-in early. However, this requires a large penalty to be paid, half of which goes to the remaining participants, while the other half goes directly to Richard. Furthermore, all Hex that is purchased, the same amount of Hex is created for Richard. Hex is also as a referral program. Each time a new Hex is generated as a reward for this program, you guessed it, Richard Hart also receives the same amount of tokens. So even if this was a super transparent thing, it's clearly super stacked upon the person who sits at the top. It's not just a game that everyone who plays evenly and fairly, according to these weird rules. It's like, no, this is clearly just a scheme to enrich the founder. And like someone should just, if someone wanted Hex, they should fork it, right? Just completely copy it and just get rid of the founder reward thingy. And just, it's like an even, call it Hex Classic or something, right? But just do a version. It would still be
the issue is everything's already been done to Hex that made it a scam. So I think the fundamental question that we have to like try to answer that I still can't really fully decide on. I mean, I'm going one way versus the other, but if something started as a scam and then removes all the scam components, is it still a scam?
If something starts a scam and you de-scamify it, is it still a scam?
Because objectively, in my mind, the thing that makes it most a scam is how he just took your money, printed things out of thin air, and he just was manipulating the price by taking out your money, buying more, and then it went right back into his wallet again, and then he could take it out and buy more, and he could just infinitely do this, and he did this several times.
Yes, in fact, where was it?
But now that he can't do that, one could argue, okay, well, there is no more manipulation of hex. This is just the actual market, but all of it was built off of the scam from the beginning, and the only
Yes.
reason we're here now is because of the scam.
I think
So the question
as long
is,
as Richard's involved with it, I would say it's a scam.
that's fair, because I mean he's still getting the majority of the money anyway and all the benefit.
So if he went to prison and then everyone was just like still using hex, I mean maybe that'd be different. But as Bonds points out, there was nothing stopping Richard from generating a theoretically infinite supply of hex from the ICO, as he was able to withdraw ETH from the ICO and put it back into the ICO in an infinite loop, which is exactly what he did. Again, proven by blockchain analysis. Says there is also evidence that the number of users claimed by hex is highly inflated, as a large number of addresses were created with very little hex below gas price by Richard, which was later used to falsely claim that hex has a huge number of users. This is where it gets into like scam territory, not just like this is a weird gambling thing. This is a scam because it's being there's deception being showed in order to accrue money, and of course it goes into Richard Hart's not his real name, blah blah blah. Everyone knows Richard Schuyler or whatever. Richard Schuyler is a known scammer as a successful spammer of Viagra and anti-aging projects, which he was successfully sued for in the early 2000s, along with legal trouble in Panama. His own blog even documents how he would sell stereo equipment he did not own and then deliver subpar equipment instead. Hex marketing is also clearly designed around generating FOMO. And then, anyway, that's pretty much it. If you want to go to Justin Bond's Twitter thing, Justin_Bonds, and read the whole thing, go for it. It's pretty good. It's a little verbose. I'll tell him to be a little better next time. But it's, there you go. Pretty, what I would call a scam, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I'll say this, like out of most of the projects that I've like gone after or called a scam or whatever, like Hex is probably one of the most egregious. And ironically, BitClout did something almost identical where he said, I'm only accepting Bitcoin, and for every Bitcoin you give me, I'll give you some BitClout. And he literally did like play for play out of the playbook of Richard Hart. Like he did the exact same thing. It's just mind-boggling to me. Plus, I mean, the guy who invented BitClout also worked on, I believe it was Basis Cash with the guy who invented Terra Luna. So there's just this huge ecosystem of scammers, and they're all using the same methods, and they like know each other. It's kind of crazy how this all just gets swept under the rug. And that's also why I think the SEC going after Coinbase isn't so bad, because they were one of the biggest promoters and investors of BitClout.
Yeah, the thing about Coinbase, and well, actually, let's say that for a bit because there is a story that's slightly off of Hex on that. We did
because it wasn't just them selling like their token, right? It was literally promoting it and like directing people to BitClout's website and like VC funding and stuff like that. It was much more egregious than just like, oh, we listed their token, we didn't know.
Yeah, I have some interesting thoughts on like Coinbase and Binance and stuff. Also nuanced, like everything. But one time at another super chat, he says, I don't know the details about Hex, but if important details are available to read in fine print, is that a scam? Should people be responsible for their own decisions, responsible for not reading, understanding the fine print before participating? Or do people need to be protected from participating in investments they don't understand? I'll let
that's
you
go
a good
first
question.
On
that one.
Yeah, that's a fair question. But at the end of the day, we know that the reality is most investors are not like, they're not like seasoned investors. They're not highly knowledgeable in the field, especially most crypto investors who are being like lured into these 10x, 20x, 100x, possibilities. They're just being tricked and manipulated because they really don't understand the space. And everyone who comes to me to ask me advice about crypto isn't like, hey, what's Bitcoin? Should I invest? They're like, hey, here's X random coin that I've never heard about. My friend invested money. Should I invest in this? I know nothing about it. And it's crazy to me that that's how people operate. But that is how most people I've seen operate who are amateur investors.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to some degree, they do need to be, yes, to some degree, they do need to be protected. I don't think that they need to be prevented from making their own decisions, but they, at the very minimum, need to be like made aware of what's going on for various things. maybe it's as simple as like you have to take a basic like quiz before they let you onto an exchange or something. Like they're starting to do
Or
this
that
more
would, yeah, or that'd be the
for stock
responsible thing to
investing.
do.
Yeah, because they're starting to actually do this more for stock investing, where they're like, well, how much money are you going to invest, and like, are you aware of the risks, and da-da-da. So they're starting to get a little bit more deliberate about that. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe we need like some very basic entry level thing, because people really do not know, or at the very minimum be like, look, this amount of money has been stolen for people in scams in the last 2 years. Are you fully confident in the thing that you're investing in, and like enough about it, and you've done your research, etc. I mean, do your research has become such a like cliche that people don't act like, they say it as like a
It's a,
saying.
it's
It's
a
not like they're
dumb
actually
throwaway
saying to
thing.
do that.
I think do your
Yeah,
own
exactly.
research is a very important thing to do and to recommend, but also I think it's
And it's
being
become
used as a
so
stupid
overused
meme.
that,
Well, so
yeah,
to
exactly.
answer Onetime's thing about that, he says, if important details are available to read in the fine print, is that a scam? So all these details about Hex and its launch and stuff, I don't think all of them were available to read anywhere. I really don't. As far as who owns the founder's address, I mean, everyone knows that's Richard at this, everyone who's not an
Yeah.
idiot, but it's never been explicitly said. As far as who put money back into the ICO and stuff and all that inflated numbers, all that kind of stuff, I don't think that
Yeah,
was.
none of that is included for sure.
Yes. And
So like,
the fine
yeah.
print, I have read some of the Hex website and just looked into some of the stuff that they, and I don't think that a lot of the scammy stuff was mentioned at all, or at least the marketing goes very much against that, to where the average Hex person doesn't know these things or doesn't believe it. And so in that case, I would say you could have a class action lawsuit by Hex investors to say that Hex willingly misled them on certain key facts and stuff like that. And something like that would be very legitimate. Now, as far as the rest of the thing that Onetime is saying, that's the different story. Should people be responsible for their own decisions, responsible for not reading and understanding the fine print before participating? Yes, people should absolutely be responsible for that, as long as they are not being deliberately scammed or misled. Or do people need to be protected from participating in investments they don't understand? No, they should. In my opinion, as far as like legal, like disallowing them from doing this, absolutely they should not be. People should buy as much Doge as they want after any single Elon tweet or whatever. They should be able to do that as much as they want. I think it's a responsibility on us in the community to educate them about why that might not be a good idea. And also, I believe an organization like the SEC has a valuable place, but not the SEC, an organization like them. Let's just say the Securities and Exchange Council, which is a purely policy recommendation and advisory sort of body that then doesn't sue Richard Hart over this stuff, puts out a scam alert on Richard Hart and Pulse and stuff, and says all the same stuff, just no actual legal bearing as far as going after him. And then, based on whatever information that they put out there, individuals can then form a class action lawsuit and say that they were defrauded, if that is the case. If they were actually, and if that holds up in court, then that happens. But as far as an enforcement SEC, I personally don't think such a thing should exist. And definitely the way the SEC is working now. And yes, do your own research. You're responsible for all your own things. That being said, I think Hex scammed people. That's my conclusion. And I have to say also, anyone who is deeper into the Hex community, or I mean, I'm not in it at all, but I'm saying is deep into the Hex community, who wants to have a good faith conversation on this, I'm open. I mean, if it's a good faith one, I want to talk to.
That's a pretty big ask. I mean, honestly, I don't think a lot of them come in with good faith. They're like, I've had a few conversations, and it's always like, well, you just don't understand Hex. It's like, my friend,
my brother
I've
in
got
Christ.
all this whole like, I've got all of this, like this whole article. I send them the article. I'm like, just go through this and tell me what is wrong, and I'll go in, I'll edit it. Like I'll delete the stuff that's wrong. 90% of them come back to me and they say, yeah, but you didn't talk how Hex is so great and it's giving you all this passive income. It's like, okay, yeah, I didn't praise Hex in my article criticizing Hex. What is wrong in the article? And they're like, I'm not going to get into that. You're just a hater. It's like, okay, well, tell me something is wrong and I'll change the article, and then anyone who
Mm-hmm.
comes back to this article will not see the thing that is wrong. But I never get anything that's actually incorrect, because 95% of the information I included is from the Hex website. I mean, as to what you were saying, like, yeah, obviously they don't include like Richard took out the money with the flush address and did all that, but like a lot of the sketchy technicals and things that you could find, penalties, bonuses, all that, it's all there. And if you go to like hex.com/disclaimer, it literally says, never expect profit from the work of others.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what do you expect there? Like, he literally tells you, don't expect a profit here. It just blows my mind.
Don't expect the advertising to be accurate. See, that's when
Yeah.
it becomes a scam, right? And I have to say, this is very going to turn the gun around to all crypto, basically. A lot of us, I guess, got into crypto to a certain extent because of like a hedge against inflation or something, or basically an expectation that this will outperform the dollar or any of the dollars, really. But I do think that should be. I don't think that can be promised. I do think that you can promise, based on the way the coin is going, lower inflation and stuff like that, and then the fundamentals are strong, and this should easily outperform the dollar. And if you look at crypto as a whole, or Bitcoin specifically, it generally has significantly outpaced the dollar in that thing. Now, however, I don't recommend anyone buy crypto ever. Like, not even a specific one. I think people should use crypto because it works for it clearly works for what it's advertised for today. I think it will go up because of the fundamentals are stronger, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know if it will. Some of the best projects don't always go up.
Yeah.
So just, that's not even it'll go up, but do your own research. It's do your own research. Not even it'll go up.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I think that's a really good point too, because it's like, I don't tell people to buy crypto because I think it's going to like skyrocket. Though, I mean, generally, I do believe we're gonna go into another bull cycle soon, but I don't like. That's not why I say to buy it. I say buy it because, like, you need to decentralize your finances. You need to have the ability to leave the country at any time and take all of your money with you, which you literally cannot do in any other form. I can't bring my house. I can't bring all my gold. Like, they'll take it at the border. Like, there's so many things that you can't bring, but crypto is the one thing that is like universal. And then you could just go to any other country, take money out of Bitcoin ATM, whatever it happens to be. That's why you need crypto. It's a financial alternative to decentralize your finances so that you're not like piling all of your risk into like a small amount of assets that can be taken from you easily by the government or whoever else. That's the real main drive for these things. And you can decentralize your finances in a million different ways. I'm sure you've covered all this. So
yeah, of course. The thing is also, as far as recommending based on pumps and stuff, I do think that, for example, Bitcoin, a lot of the Bitcoiners of the modern age, like I would say the post 2017 era, I would say could be considered to be engaging in scammy behavior, in just a lot of like, it's going up, buy it now, this is your last chance to buy under this price. I mean, that's very Hex-like, if you ask me. Like, obviously there's a lot of sound fundamentals that anyone can audit that shows that it's probably going to do a lot better than the dollar, all other things considered. But saying those kinds of things, I think, is scamming people too. So it's not like, even projects that I like, if you're saying buy it, like, so, I mean, I'm a big believer in Zcash's tech, for example. And there's this one account, I'm not going to name it because I don't want to specifically, was saying stuff like, it's the investment opportunity of a lifetime to buy Zcash this low. And then I just commented on them like, look, I really like Zcash, but you can't be saying this stuff. Like, people are going to buy in and no one knows what the price is going to do, and they could lose money, and you don't know that. And like, you don't know if like Zcash's tech is going to be used by a different coin that really does a whole lot better, or some other thing happens and it just goes to zero. Like, you don't know. I don't know. Like, but that's a risk we all take. But you can't just tell people, oh, buy it, it's going to go up. Like, no, that's scamming people. Sorry. It doesn't matter if it's like, it's not just oh, you're just salty because you hate Hex and don't give it a fair shake. It's like, no, no, I give it plenty of a fair shake, and I give plenty of criticism to all the projects I like the best too.
Yeah, and I'll say too, like I owned Hex for a few months just because I was like, more of a noob at the time, and I was just kind of like grabbing things that I thought might be useful. And then when I actually looked into it, I was like, yeah, no, this is a bad cryptocurrency. I shouldn't hold this or endorse this. And I sold it. And then I wrote that article. And then I added more to the article as I learned more. But it's as simple as that. Like if you actually look into something, you'll be able to decide for yourself whether or not this is like a safe investment. And it just comes down to your level of like tolerance of what's quote unquote safe or like risky, because I mean crypto is by far more risky than any other like asset class. So as long as you're like aware of everything as you're going into it, it's not going to be as bad. But again, everyone I've ever talked to is always just like insert random coin, should I buy this, my friend bought it, like, and it's scary that that's how it is. Like I was getting my hair cut 2 years ago, and my hairdresser's like,
And
"Oh,
you,
you were
and
saying
since
something
then
about
as
crypto."
well.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm like talking about crypto, and he's like, "Oh, like so I invested in IOTA. What do you think about that?" And I was like, "I mean, I don't really see it being used in a ton of places. Like, I don't know if it's going to go up, whatever." I was like, personally, I just stick to like the main ones. And he's like, "Oh yeah, because like I don't know, like my friend invested in it, so I put $20,000." And I was like, "What? You don't know anything about this? Like, and you just put $20,000 in it?" It just blows my mind how easy people were just like throwing money at crypto. They know nothing about it. And they're literally just asking random people on the street, like, "Hey, was this a good investment I made?" And that's like crazy.
Yeah, and if you want to gamble that way, it's your prerogative, but you should just know that you're doing that. And if you
But
lose,
like, by the way,
yeah,
if I told him no, you should sell, he wouldn't have sold. And if I said, yeah, that's a great thing, he like it wouldn't have made a difference what I said either, right? It's
yeah,
just like
just wants
asking random people for
validation.
advice that you're not going to take.
It is pretty funny. That's kind of where I knew the 2017 bull market was at its top, when I heard
Yeah,
people in just like college kids in the local pub talking about like how they put all their money in IOTA and stuff on Coinbase. I'm just like, oh, like
yeah,
this is very top. And also a lot of people like that I know, like it's really like this is where this gets like ugly from like a humanity standpoint, but I do think a lot of people are just going to lose their money. And I think most people, in fact, just generally speaking, who try to
like
invest.
even investing in stocks too.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately the people who make money are the ones who make it off of a lot of times. This is in investing a lot of times, right? Well, this is speculative investing. Let me say that. You could invest in a company and then the company makes a lot of money and you make money and no one loses money. That happens, right? It's just the company provides valuable goods and services and you get a part of that. But as far as trading is someone is losing money, right? You buy it higher than
Yeah,
them. It's so when you're trading, like most people I've noticed normies, like they wait till the top of the bull cycle where they get the FOMO.
a
And then they
hundred
get in,
percent.
they buy it, and within a year they're out, right when it's like down.
Ugh.
And it's like,
And they like to buy it after it's gone on a run.
yes, after it's gone a run, and it's like, okay, you
Yeah,
bought $68,000 Bitcoin. Okay, fine. Not the smartest, but you're new to this. And they're like, oh, it's going down. How much more is it going to go down? And I just say, like, I could just tell people, again, this non-investment advice, but based on past experience, past market history, this is a bear cycle. Why don't you wait 3.5 years and then revisit it? And if it's like, look, if Bitcoin is above 68,000, in at the end of what is it, 2025? At the end of 2025, if it's not past that, maybe it's going to zero. You should sell it, right? But don't sell before then. Wait for the cycle to
yeah,
do its thing. Just check it again. Not investment advice, you fucks. I'm not telling anyone.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm just saying, like, but the
Bank
fact
of
that
International Settlements says you can banks can start putting money reserves into Bitcoin as of 2025 January 1st. Fingers crossed.
wow, January 1st, so that's going to start the bull year probably.
That's my hope. I mean,
We'll see.
again, not investment advice, but like, yeah, like that's the way I look at it. It's like, yeah, it's gonna just run in cycles, and I'm gonna get a lot of people messaging me in a couple years, being like, sorry, and like, how do I do this, and how do I invest, and da da da. You know, it's we'll see how it plays out, but I'm very, very confident that we're going to go into another bull cycle soon enough. I mean, BlackRock just opened a spot ETF for Bitcoin, so if they're on board, I mean, I think we're pretty much good to go.
Yeah, something is going to go up. Of course, unfortunately, the more this kind of stuff happens with like BlackRock and stuff, the less I'm interested in Bitcoin because it's the more captured it seems to be
That's
by
fair.
government state actors. But that doesn't mean it's not going to go up. Let me hit on finally the Coinbase type thing, just to kind of wrap up the thing. So the SEC has violated due process. Coinbase CLO on motion to dismiss lawsuit. The lawyers for Coinbase cited precedent from the SEC versus Ripple case, which fantastic that the case is now giving people ammo to fight back, I guess, in which a judge ruled the XRP largely did not qualify as a security by the commission standards, and so now they're hitting back against that. But that's more of a thing to return to the point that mostly you were making back then, in the ancient years of like 30, 40 minutes ago, of that Coinbase and all these exchanges have been involved in some sketchy things. So this is where the nuance goes. I think that I think that they are being maliciously targeted, and I think that they should have the ability to sell and operate, do business, and do whatever they want, with the exception of some things that, like for example, Binance is doing by or like with the Steam thing, where they're literally FTXing customer funds. They're literally taking them and doing other things. That stuff there's no excuse for that, right? Now, that being said, I can't think of a single cryptocurrency exchange. Maybe Kraken, because I just don't know enough about them. But I can't think of a single crypto exchange that hasn't done some sketchy shit. Like Coinbase.
I mean, I don't know if Kraken's done anything wrong, but they did lose a lot of money from like a breach.
Yeah, I mean,
I did this in my not last week's podcast, but 2 weeks ago. I did a whole thing on the failure of centralized exchanges and how basically every single exchange has done something malicious, or they've lost your money, or something has happened where you might not want to trust them, essentially.
Yeah, and with Coinbase, I'm I guess more familiar just because I don't know. Because Binance does so many weird things, it's hard to keep track, right? But as far as Coinbase is concerned, the listing of Litecoin in the early days, which I don't think Litecoin's a scam, let me be clear about that, but it was scammy. It was, Charlie Lee was their director of engineering or whatever, and then he tweeted, "Hey, I had Litecoin," and Litecoin's development was dead, and then it just bull cycle because the Coinbase touch was like magic back then. And that's clearly an insider trading kind of thing. Then there's been lots of insider trading allegations, including Brian Armstrong was asked about did Coinbase ever trade in assets before listing them? And then he kind of mumbled his way through that one. So probably yes. They did some weird things where they didn't let people claim their split Bitcoin from Bitcoin Cash or something like that. There was something going on with that. There's a lot of weird little things with that have been going on for a while. Of course, there's slightly just annoying things that exchanges do, like listing fees and stuff. Now, Coinbase, as far as I know, has never done listing fees, but they have done the Coinbase Earn thing, where they'll allow, if you give them a ton of money, they'll pay people in your token to learn about the token on their site. It's gamified, kind of learn through things. And there's other things like that. And so that's the thing that really annoys me is I want to be 100% on Coinbase's side. And as far as fighting against the SEC in this thing, I am 100% on Coinbase's side on that battle. But just come on, guys, could you just not also be criminals a little bit in other ways? Could you?
That's why I said in that podcast, I said, look, just use exchanges that don't have KYC. Just use swap exchanges. Just do it as decentralized as you possibly can, because it's also to your benefit. When they have breaches, when they get hacked, when they get sued, when all this stuff happens, you don't want to be using their platforms or, getting the penalizations extending to your accounts or whatever it happens to be. Clearly, with all of them being involved in something one way or another, it's at some point you have to be okay, this clearly is not the best way to go. why not use things that like don't require KYC, and then that also is a benefit to you? And like, but I mean, sometimes there'll be people who will be like, oh yeah, but no KYC is sketchy. And it's like, I mean, the SEC is not there to protect you. They're just there to get their money. If they were really there to protect you, the SEC would be going after all of these people for the actual scammy things that they've done, not just unregistered securities, which is the only thing they ever go after. Which is unfortunate too, because it also misleads people, because then they go, okay, well, the SEC is going after Hex, but all Hex has ever done is just sell unregistered securities like everyone else. And it's like, okay, well, that's not all they've done. They're just not mentioning that, which is unfortunate, but the reality.
Yeah, for sure. One time did another comment in the super chat. Let me bring that up. Scroll past it. He said, "Will BlackRock's ETF be approved?" What do you think?
That's a good question. Probably. And I also don't actually expect Coinbase to have anything bad happen to them, given that they work so closely with like JP Morgan Chase for USDC. I feel like they're going to have some weird protections. This is complete speculation, but I think Binance, they will have something happen, and Coinbase, it will be fine. They'll get off scot-free, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that Coinbase is going to get off entirely free, because just the fact that they're gearing up for such a fight, like they've talked about suing, they added ahead of this, like ahead of any inklings of a lawsuit from the SEC, they added in a voting map in their app to show who are the anti-crypto legislators or in their area to help people vote them out of office and stuff. So they were going pretty aggressive in like this stuff for a while, and they really hit back hard. I don't think that Coinbase, if they're trying to play nice, would hit back that hard and threaten to leave jurisdictions and all this kind of stuff. Look, here we are in the UK. We're going to leave you totally. Like that whole nonsense. Like, I'm pretty sure they're fighting to stay.
But like, how would they be able to get out of their integrate? Like USDC is purely with like JP Morgan Chase. Like I don't see how they would ever be able to just like leave and go to the UK and still have the second largest stable coin in the world. Like I don't see that playing out, and I feel like there's too much reliance now on that. We'll see, though. We'll see. In my mind, more conspiratorial, but I don't think that. I think they've got too much going on with USDC, and I think they're gonna overlook some things because of that, and how that will negatively impact JP Morgan Chase a lot if something bad happens to them with USDC being fully backed by JP Morgan Chase. So I'm very curious to see how that plays out. But I'm skeptical that Coinbase is going to get like, a massive lawsuit, like actual payout. But we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that I think that they might get a slap on the wrist. This is my speculation, by the way, not investment advice.
Yeah.
I do believe that they will probably get some sort of a slap on the wrist. And I'm kind of 50-50 on how much of their crypto trading activities they're going to have to suspend in the U.S. And so they might be like, well, it might be most of the good assets, or most of the assets people want to trade on Coinbase will be, you have to do it through a VPN, or not available to U.S. customers, right? And then so you'll be able to get like Bitcoin and a whole bunch of other like decent cryptos, and of course USDC, and trade it all. But then they'll be like, oh, USDC, bridge USDC to Base, their L2. And then trade on all the DEX stuff with all the other tokens that's outside of the purview and stuff like that. They're going to be fine. I think USDC is probably also going to be fine, which is probably why they went after BUSD, Binance's thing, because they're just like, nope, this town ain't big enough for two of us, partner.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So in my mind, I honestly believe it's really about BUSD as a competitor to USDC. That's really where I think things are going. Like, I don't think it's so much about the unregistered securities. I think it's a lot more about the control of stable coins as we gear up for, the CBDC launch that we're going to see.
Let's be honest. How is USDC not a CBDC? I mean...
Oh, yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, the only reason it's not is because it's not directly managed by the Federal Reserve, but the Federal Reserve prints the money for JP Morgan Chase and It's kind of like all connected in a way.
Yeah, so I think that definitely what will make a CBDC a CBDC is when the Federal Reserve starts to be more directly involved in issuing and authorizing stablecoins, I should say. So that's kind of where that kind of hits. But
And
anyway,
I want to quickly touch on what you mentioned about the VPN. I've
yeah,
started to notice that certain services are being banned from U.S. citizens. So, SideShift, my
yeah,
favorite swap exchange,
I think
has
that's
recently made it so that you get redirected to sideshift.fi if you're in the United States only, and then they
mm,
force you to connect your wallets to the platform when you use it, so that they can like have more data on you and like know which wallets you're using. It just seems super sketchy. I'm like,
well,
why are they doing this? But if you
actually,
VPN, they let you just use it normally.
I guess I have an alternative take on that. I think that SideShift doesn't operate in the U.S. at all, and so if you're in the U.S. and you don't have a VPN on, you do it. They direct you to a DEX aggregator, which is why you have to connect your wallet because it's literally doing it on a DEX instead of just like a send and receive kind of thing. And so
Okay.
that's probably why it's literally like a Uniswap front end. They're just directing you to. And so,
But they only limit you to like a couple wallets and stuff. It just seems sketchy to me that like they're removing your ability to have like open use of the platform. You can only use a restricted amount of wallets, etc. And I don't know. It just seems kind of sketchy when it's like you could just use anything you want, send from any address,
mm-hmm.
whatever. It really defeats the purpose because if I'm trying to swap Tron USDT for Bitcoin, I can't do that if they only let me connect MetaMask and Trust Wallet, right?
Yeah,
Like they're yeah.
I think it might just be they didn't build out enough of those integrations. The reason why I'm taking kind of this point of view also is because I've been doing a lot of work with the Maya protocol because the Maya protocol, a Thorchain fork, just integrated Dash, and they've been asking for a lot of like, stuff like that. So I kind of seeing how all the connections work as far as like the DeFi wallets and stuff, and kind
Okay.
of I'm starting kind of recognizing some patterns as far as like what's happening and what isn't.
Yeah, I need to learn more about Maya.
Yeah. It's so. I mean, do you know much about Thorchain?
Yeah, I mean, I have a pretty good idea. I did an interview, but I really slacked on releasing that. I still need to release that. I don't know if it's as relevant. I'll probably have to
It
talk to
probably
Brad again.
it
But
probably is.
yeah,
The thing is, the only difference with the Maya protocol, it's a fork of Thorchain. It has fewer assets. I think it's just like Bitcoin and Ethereum and Rune,
okay.
and has fewer assets plus Dash, which is not on Thorchain. So it's kind of like almost like parallel sharding or something like that of Thorchain. And the difference
Hmm.
is with the node bonding is instead of the node being bond purely in the native token, it's bond by LP units that then can be used to trade liquidity. So it's like it's more capital efficient in that way. One could argue less secure, but more capital efficient. So that's
Yeah.
the major difference. But eventually, the whole cross-chain DEX ecosystem is just going to be a few of these chains bound together, and when you use these swap services, it's all going to go on DEX rails, and you're not going to know necessarily which one you're using. It's just going to just like side shift, but in a completely decentralized way, which is cool, and I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's good to see. That's good to see. Because yeah, I also see a lot of swap exchanges starting to also like go the other way, where they're like, well, now you need an account, and now you need to give us this information, and now you need to give us this, and it's like real shame to see that happening. But I mean, as long as there's enough out there giving people like different options, that's good to
Mm-hmm.
see. I mean, I'm happy that at least one out of the top 10 exchanges in the world for volume is non KYC required, which is Bybit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But it's only one out of 10.
and I think that they will be. I think that that's going to be increasingly rare. That you're not going to find non KYC centralized exchanges. It's just not going to happen. And so then that means everyone's going to move to DeFi stuff. But unfortunately, like you saw, I should have actually put that up when we were talking about Hex about how the Uniswap front end delisted Hex to where now you can't
Oh
swap.
yeah, Uniswap is the most centralized, decentralized exchange I've ever seen.
Yeah, so you
Like
can still
they
trade.
removed every single stock like derivative
Mm-hmm.
ever off of their platform. Every single one, like hundreds of, I can't, this was a while ago, but they removed like hundreds and hundreds of tokens, which was every single stock derivative in existence. I don't know what happened, or like I need to look into this more, but there was a complete wipe of every stock related cryptocurrency from the entire market. DeFi, decentralized exchanges, swap exchanges, centralized exchanges, every single thing complied. I have no idea how or why, but very interesting.
Yeah, what I'd like to see is how much trading can you do on Uniswap that's not on the Uniswap front end?
That's a
Like,
good question.
because Hex is not off of Uniswap. It's just the Uniswap website. You can't use it. And which it's kind of like the Odyssey versus library thing, where just because Odyssey can censor your videos, okay, well, I kind of regret saying that because then there's the whole rabbit hole of like, well, but then the library nodes also have their own blacklist, and so you could run an unset. That gets more complicated in the library case, but I guess the point is like the front end. Like if every major wallet provider censors you, but you can still use the raw Bitcoin like core wallet or whatever, you could still use Bitcoin didn't censor you,
Yeah.
So
No, that's fair. But I would always say if 99% of users can't access it, it's pretty much like a no-go. Like it's
yeah,
like, yeah, you can have that little tiny percentage, but it's like, how many people are really going to do that? And then they'll say, oh, well, then it's those people's fault for not, being extremely technically inclined and having all this knowledge about how to do this. It's like, I feel like it goes back on them. And it's like, you can't make this like impossible to do and then claim that you can offer that still.
yeah, and that's one thing that I think it gets into like Uniswap calling the centralized thing Uniswap is kind of sketchy. I'm gonna say I don't know if sketchy is the right word, but it's kind of makes it so that it's like one and the same. Just like library, the company, and the protocol, it shouldn't have done that, right? It should be something else. That is something I like about the Maya protocol is Maya doesn't have any products, and all the front ends are run by other companies and entities and stuff. And
Yeah.
just to be like, well, just kind of disintermediate from there, so you're not the one involved with all that. I think the only thing they're running is a block explorer, Maya scan. And I can't remember if ThorSwap, the main ThorChain front end, or one of the more popular ones. I think Trust Wallet is the biggest source of ThorChain swaps, actually. But I think ThorSwap may or may not be affiliated with the ThorChain team. I don't know. But anyway, that's a little bit of a...
I might have that information in my interview, but I'll have to dig through that to really answer that question. By the way, have you looked at all at the Bank of International Settlements report on CBDCs that they put out like last month?
No, I have not.
All right. Because I just wanted to mention one thing that I thought was really interesting. Maybe we could briefly discuss it. But they mentioned that what they'd like to see in the future for CBDCs is all physical assets tokenized on the CBDC blockchain. So the assumed like future reality of that would be like you go to the airport, you've got all your stuff, and then they say, whoa, this laptop here is not registered on the CBDC blockchain. This is contraband. Do you want to leave this with us, or do you want to not go on your trip? And like that would be the dystopian future nightmare of that situation. But I don't see any valuable benefits to tokenizing all of the things that I own on the blockchain that the government controls.
Yeah, especially that last little addendum there, the government controlled blockchain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I think it's probably a good time to start wrapping the thing up. Let's go to shill-o'clock. That's the time, after all.
Shill-o'clock.
What do you have to shill at this juncture?
So yeah, I switched my podcast from crypto and things over to tech and things. So more focused on, as I said at the beginning, digital transformation and how we're going to navigate that as we progress on to Web3 using blockchain, AI, and other technologies. And that's kind of the focus going forward. So you can find tech and things on Spotify, Apple, every major podcasting website, and every crypto or blockchain social platform as well, where you can find me, Scott Cunningham, or at Scott C Business on pretty much every platform in existence as well.
Yeah, I mean, a good thing I will be able to, I'm always able to tag you on all the social networks I post.
Yeah, you're on everything pretty much too.
So like usually I just tag everyone on Twitter and that's it. But I can actually tag you on other things. So yeah, so follow the man, watch his stuff. You interviewed Chad, right, for ThorChain?
Yeah, I've really slacked. I've got interviews with 3Speak, ThorChain, uh, a bunch of different platforms that I still got to put out. So that's my bad, ThorChain people. But I will get that out eventually.
Yeah. So follow the man so you can get his interview out and get all that stuff. Also, I should point out that I am next week. There's because of like travel schedules and weird things like that. I'm probably gonna put out the Zcash podcast next week, probably on Thursday, and then Friday will be the next Dash podcast. Usually they're 1 week apart, but just like that. Also, at some point, I'm gonna hopefully try to get if there's any like good, reasonable Hex fans out there who are, I've kind of vetted that can, that aren't psychos or bad faith or whatever. I'd love to have one on, just chat about the other side of the thing. But full warning. I mean, already know what I think, and I'd like to see evidence to the contrary, not necessarily, well, but it's just fundamentals or what? No, I don't care.
You just don't understand the fundamentals.
You've never run a business, right?
Yeah. By the way, I would be more than happy for anyone to message me or comment on my article if there's anything invalid in there, and I will happily update it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But obviously, provide me evidence, provide me proof. Don't just say that I don't like it or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm always a fan of the truth, right? It's so also like I will not be deleting any of these podcasts because if I say something wrong, I want the record to show that I said something wrong back in the day. Like I don't want to be like, never mind, and like I wasn't actually a scammer kind of thing. Like no, I believe what I believe because of this evidence, and so maybe I'll see the light on Hex and be like, no, it's the greatest opportunity of a lifetime, and then all this kind of stuff. Maybe I'll do that. In which case I'll just be like, yeah, remember I used to be a hater. See all these, not hater. I used to be a critic. See all these podcasts, the evidence. And so if I change my mind, that would actually make the case stronger. So before anyone like, FUD, whatever, I'm leaving it up. And yeah, feel free to convince me that I'm wrong or convince me that I might have missed something. I think that the best arguments on this so far have come from Onetime, who I would not call a Hex shill or anything like that, but someone like a more reasonable take on due diligence and buyer beware and all that kind of stuff. And that's a very important thing to remember. But it doesn't mean that the Hex team, i.e. the guy, freaking Richard and his weird... I just love the video of him like with all those Gucci shopping bags. He has like one in his mouth too and stuff.
Yeah.
And it just can barely get out the self-indictment of that kind of thing is kind of I think a lot of people also just honestly see that and are like, I want to be like that man. I'm going to buy his token because I want to have all those Gucci bags.
And to be like him, you got to scam millions of people. So
yeah, it's really, there's only one king, right? So anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you guys next week for a few different things, and watch Tech and Things with Scott C. Business, and then comment when ThorChain on all his content now. But you have to spell it WEN, or he's not going to take you seriously. When ThorChain.
Okay.
And then say when Maya. Maybe he's even going to interview Alux of the Maya protocol next. Which
I've been slacking with interviews, but I want to get back onto that. The next video that I'll be putting out will be on the cost of centralization, focusing on why it's actually way more expensive to deal with centralized things. The easiest example is USDT and USDC cost up to 40% more to transact because of their blacklists, having to check every single transaction. And I think that's the easiest example to point to.
I've heard that, but I'm also looking forward to seeing the whole video on it and stuff, because that's kind of a thesis of mine as well. And I have not done the data. I've not dug into the data that you have on this, and I'd be willing to have you do my own research. Right.
Yeah. I'm going to do a video for that rather than podcast, so I can really like deep dive. So going forward, I'll only be doing videos once a month or two and doing like a really, really big deep dive very intense research and stuff. And then the podcasts are more just like a weekly thing, kind of riffing on what's going on and talking about some stuff.
Yeah. All right, fantastic. Just wrap up with what's his face. Onetime says, "Great show." Okay, thank you, Onetime. You're a real one. And anyway, have fun, everyone. Have a great weekend. Don't forget that your phone is spying on you. That the fiat is a scam. You can't live all off crypto, and don't get suckered into number go up, because number does what number will do, and we can't predict it. Bye, everyone. Have a good weekend.